Hi, folks. Rob Goller here. Thank you for joining me for our weekly history chats. Really appreciate the feedback I'm getting. In fact, someone stopped me literally on the sidewalk today as I was walking uh, and talked about one of the recent topics that we had and gave me a few more ideas. So, thanks for that great feedback. Feedback. It's wonderful. This week's topic is very timely, and it has been brought up. Someone asked me a question about the history of February break. And coincidentally, I had just recently found an article as I was looking for something else. I was researching a totally different topic. This happens a lot with me, and I'm sure with a lot of you. And I came across an article from 2004, so 20 years ago. And they were discussing this in the school districts in our area, including East Aurora School District. We're discussing the future of February break. And this article is appeared in Easter Advertiser. I know quite a bit about it because I happened to write it. I was covering that issue back in that topic back in 2004 when I was the editor of the Easter Advertiser. Um, they were actually discussing how February break was going. So to answer one of the questions someone had asked me, is February break dates back to 2002 here in East Aurora and other school districts around the area. And it was a fairly new practice that people really didn't get used to for a couple years. Today, we're really used to having that February break right in the middle of February, President's Day week. But anyone who's like me, older than, say, 30 years old, remembers a time when we did not have a February break besides President's Day. The break was for spring was the week before, usually the week before and the week after Easter, and it was a 2 week break, which is by today's standards very long, a very long break. And then in 2002, they tried a new thing for our area anyway, was to split that break up a week at Easter time and then a week in February for President's Day week. Now, this idea didn't just come out of the blue. This idea of a February break had been quite popular in New England and down in New York City. And actually, at the time when East Aurora school officials were talking about it, they pointed to the school districts downstate in New York City and places like Vermont. And actually, in California, it was pretty popular as well to have a week off from school in the middle of February, President's Week. And it was originally called in these other areas, some places call it Ski Week because a lot of families would take a ski vacation. It was prime skiing time, and so in some areas they called it Ski Week. There was some issues about whether you should call it Ski Week because not a lot of families could go skiing, and it wasn't primarily for skiing. But that's just sort of the name that had come out of it. And so here locally, we gave it a try, beginning in 2002. Now, what happens is a lot of school districts have to kind of, with the calendar, the school calendar, have to adopt the same calendar because you have school sports and lots of other activities that intertwine among school districts. So this was a big discussion back in 2002, 2003, 2004, and a little beyond that. Today, like I said, we got so used to that. It's part of our culture, our calendar. A lot of people I know are on vacation this week. And it's slower around town, right? You don't see as much traffic. There's not as much there's no school buses. It's just a vacation week, not only for the schools, but for the communities that have off this week with the schools. So it developed in 2002 around here, taking off from other parts of the country where they had been doing this so-called ski week in the middle of February. This was kind of controversial early on because we weren't used to it. I know I was used to, as a kid, we'd have the 2 weeks at Easter. And now I'm looking back on it and thinking, wow, 2 weeks is a really long time for a school break, in my opinion. And that it's better to have, at least how I operate, I'd love to have two smaller breaks separated than one big long break. Um, So that was actually part of the discussion is whether which one was more advantageous, the 2 weeks off at Easter that was what was previously done, or the week splitting those 2 weeks, one in February and one at Easter time. And it was split. It pretty much split 50-50. And they even said that at the school board meetings at the time was, you ask one person, you're going to get, they prefer the 2 weeks all at once, and you talk to another person, and they want them split. And of course, as we know, the split calendar won out. But some of the things that they were discussing was the 2 weeks, number one, being a very long time to adopt that split schedule, was that 2 weeks was a long stretch for students to have off and to come back and get acclimated. It was just a long stretch of time. There was actually 2 weeks at Christmas in some instances, even if the Christmas didn't land in such a way that would require 2 weeks. It was just always 2 weeks then and then 2 weeks at Easter time. So it was a long stretch of time. That was one of the arguments. But then conversely, people were saying that it was a long stretch from the Christmas break to Easter to not have a break. There were, of course, the Monday holidays, President's Day. Martin Luther King Day actually came a little later. I remember as a student that Martin Luther King Day sort of was being phased in. It was first a state holiday, and then it was recognized as a federal holiday. But they were saying that the January, February, March stretch was a really long time to not have a full break. So they wanted to split it up and have February sort of split up that time in between Christmas and Easter. But then there were other folks that were saying, well, you know how we are. Kids are the same way, students, but we as adults even are. The days leading up to a vacation or a break, or even especially the day before, and coming out of it, we just we're really excited for the break. So maybe we're not as productive before the break, and when we come back too, we're tired and to get reacclimated. And yes, the 2 week period that we used to do at Easter was a very long time to get acclimated coming back, but then we did it twice. So you were doubling the acclimation time, the excitement time beforehand and after. And there's actually one school board member who said that the downside to splitting the vacation time, having one in February and one at Easter, was that we were going to double the amount of unproductive time, quote unquote, that just comes naturally as we like to say, kids are that way, but we as adults are that way too. The weeks before a vacation and things, I would say. So they were actually discussing this during school board meetings on what to do. And the sports schedules, they were concerned about sports schedules getting split up too much. And then you throw in the high school regents exams. So some students don't have to be at school in the high school if they don't have an exam. So you have a out of the ordinary week that's thrown there in January. And so and then there were folks that were actually saying the 1 week at Easter was not friendly to family vacations. That splitting up the 2 weeks actually wasn't conducive for family vacations because they would have to to leave and get back within a week's time, as opposed to a 2 week period that gave them a little more flexibility when it came to going to Florida or going to visit a family. And so they actually, one of the school members called the split vacation schedule, February and Easter, very choppy. That our spring semester just became way too choppy with the split vacations. So those were some of the things that the school boards around here were talking about, the pros and cons of it. But it seems, just from my reading of it and reading of things, not just in our own school district, but the history of February break in other school districts, is that it really is in the eye of the beholder, which is preferred. You really get pros and cons on both sides, and one's winning out. And the school districts talked about those pros and cons. And in the end, the February break won out. So we've become used to it. But it's really difficult, I think, sometimes to imagine, because we've gotten so used to it, imagine a time where there wasn't a break during February for that we've just gotten accustomed to culturally, not just if you go to the school, but anything connected with the school and the community, the traffic, all that. We're just sort of in vacation mode this week of the year. And that didn't happen before. President's Day week was not always a week off. With that said, if you look back, President's Day, which is actually technically still known as Washington's birthday, as a federal holiday, it's one of our oldest holidays recognized, and it was Washington's birthday was a time, and you read through the papers, it was sort of a time that people felt like coming out of their cabin fever. There were a lot of excursion trains, special trains that would take people to Buffalo. You read just the ads in the newspapers, even in the 1800s, they'd have Washington's birthday specials at stores to get people out. It was sort of the turning point of winter. Yes, we still get bad weather after the end of February, but the worst of the winter weather was over, and it just felt like it was time to come out and go out shopping and take a train somewhere. And so a lot of the railroads and stores would have specials, and so that's always been a thing. And there were ski vacations. You could go away just even around here and ski. They didn't necessarily call it Ski Week here, though. I've never seen here locally the February break being called Ski Week like it's called other places. We've tended to call it February break. Again, that's a local cultural thing, I think. But Washington's birthday, President's Day week has always been a time where people feel like going on a little break, taking a little break. Might not have been the whole week like it is today, but President's Day has just always offered that opportunity, which I thought was interesting. So that goes back to the 1800s. But having the week off is a very new phenomenon, a new practice, just over 20 years old. So anybody in just like one generation. So anybody before that would have experienced 2 weeks at Easter and not a break in the middle of February, except for President's Day. So that's interesting how we've changed, our habits have changed, and even some of the cultural things that we're doing today with a February break wouldn't have existed just one generation ago. And we feel like, so it's kind of like interesting to keep that in perspective when you're reading about old times or previous, the schools previously or students previously or just our culture previously, that that we didn't have that February break, and actually the Easter break was much more impactful. 2 weeks off, usually for students to have the week before and after Easter off was a pretty big deal, a huge stretch of time. So we don't have that anymore. So when you're looking back, it's just interesting how the time has changed. Just something little like that changes the perspective of the people who lived at the time, and how our perspective is different today because we have this February break. Kind of interesting. A few questions, so thanks for that topic idea. I'll probably be writing about that next year or the year after, about February break, because I just came across that and I thought it was an interesting history, a very new part of our history. Thanks for the feedback. A couple of you had asked about, since last week's live stream, we talked about the difference between East Aurora and Aurora, the town and the village. And we were talking about East Aurora. The village is marking its 150th anniversary in 2024. And it's the 150th anniversary of the village becoming East Aurora. If you want to know more, watch last week's live stream. But there's some folks asking about, we're talking about commemorating that this year. And I talked about an exhibit that we currently have at the town hall about the Centelebration, which was the village's 100th anniversary in 1974. And some folks were bringing up celebrations in 1968 and 1993. And we tend to mix them all up. And I do the same thing. And sometimes I feel if I wasn't living this day after day that I would absolutely mess them all up, because it does get confusing. But the 1974 celebration, and a few people asked about this, and so I'm thinking other people are thinking of it as well. 1974 was the village's anniversary. 1968, which a lot of people remember, and in both cases, people made vintage outfits and wore Little House on the Prairie style outfits for the parades. They did that both in 1968 and 1974, and some people have mixed the two up. 1968 was the 150th anniversary of the town of Aurora. Within the town is the village of East Aurora, and that was the 100th anniversary of that was in 1974. Then some folks remembered 1993, which we called the Triquasquicentennial, Triqui 93, and that was the Triquasquicentennial, 175th anniversary. That was the anniversary of the town. And then in 2018, we had the bicentennial of the town. So the town and the village are different, and our remembrances of some people were asking because they were getting they didn't think we should be at 150 yet, or we were way beyond 150. Well, that is the case of the town. So again, 1968, 1993, 2018 was the town anniversary. 1974 and 2024 are the village's anniversary. And so I hope that clears that up. And if you have any more questions about that, send them on. And it does get confusing, but just celebrate, just commemorate, and be proud of our community. In any event, whether it's the town or the village. But if you do have more questions about that, that's something I didn't address, was the celebrations. But I encourage you to watch last week's video if you have any further inquiry into that or interest in that topic, the difference between East Aurora and Aurora, and why we name them that. Again, thank you so much for your input and suggestions. Again, these videos are available also on the YouTube channel, and I try to get them up on that channel as soon as possible. If you like what you're hearing, please share and comment, and let me know that you're listening, and send along your topic ideas. I'd love to hear from you, and that's where I get the best ideas. I don't always get them from my own research. I listen to what people suggest and the questions that are on your mind. So that's the reason I do these videos. Again, thanks for keeping history alive, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.